I had a coworker named Diane. Diane drove a 2016 Honda Fit with a scratch on the rear bumper she never bothered to fix. She brought lunch in a reusable container every single day, usually something she'd batch cooked on Sunday. She wore the same rotation of maybe 6 outfits. She never talked about vacations to Bali or dinners at rooftop restaurants. She said no to happy hour more often than she said yes. When she did come out, she ordered water and a salad and didn't seem bothered by it at all. For 2 years I sat across from Diane and quietly assumed she was struggling. I assumed she was careful with money because she had to be, not because she chose to be. I felt a little sorry for her in the way you feel sorry for someone who seems like life hasn't given them much of a break. Then one afternoon she mentioned, completely casually, the way you'd mention the weather, that she'd just hit $400,000 in her investment accounts at 34. She wasn't bragging. She wasn't even making a point. It came up because someone at the table was complaining about their credit card bill and she said, quietly, that she stopped using credit cards for anything she couldn't pay off same day about 6 years ago, and that the money she'd redirected since then was now sitting at $400,000. The table went silent. I did the math later. At 8% average annual return, Diane was on track to retire before 50 with more than $2 million. She wasn't struggling. She was winning, completely invisibly, in a way that none of us had seen because none of us knew what winning actually looked like. This is the thing nobody tells you. Real wealth building looks boring from the outside. It doesn't look like a leased BMW. It doesn't look like a corner apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows. It looks like Diane. It looks like a scratched Honda Fit and Sunday meal prep and saying no to happy hour while your index funds quietly compound in the background. This video is about the behaviors, the habits, the quiet signals that separate people who are actually building wealth from people who are performing it. 9 signs that someone in your life, maybe a coworker, a neighbor, maybe you, is getting quietly, seriously rich while nobody around them has any idea. These signs are the opposite of flashy. That's exactly the point. If you're new here, I'm Liana, and on this channel we talk about real money, real habits, and real financial freedom for everyday Americans. Make sure you subscribe to Liana Invests so you never miss a video, and if this one helps you, hit that like button, it helps more people find us. Let's get into it. They automate their savings before they budget for anything else. The most reliably wealth-building people I've studied and interviewed don't rely on willpower to save. They don't wait until the end of the month and save whatever's left over because they know from experience that what's left over is usually nothing. They pay themselves first, automatically, before the spending can happen. Their 401k contribution hits before their paycheck hits their checking account. Their Roth IRA transfer is scheduled for the second their direct deposit lands. Their emergency fund gets a fixed amount every single month the way a mortgage payment does, without negotiation, without flexibility, without a single conscious decision required. Fidelity data from Q4 2025 shows that people who automate their retirement contributions save at nearly twice the rate of people who contribute manually. The automation isn't laziness, it's architecture. It's building a system where the right behavior happens without depending on motivation, because motivation is unreliable and compound interest is not. They buy things based on value, not visibility. The quietly wealthy person at your office is not buying the newest iPhone the week it drops. They are not replacing furniture because a design trend changed. They are not upgrading their car because their current car has some miles on it. They ask a completely different question than most Americans ask when they're about to spend money. Most Americans ask, can I afford the payment? The quietly wealthy ask, what is this actually worth to me in use, in years, in daily value, and is this price proportional to that worth? It's a slower calculation. It leads to fewer purchases and significantly better outcomes. The National Millionaire Study from Ramsey Solutions found that 94% of millionaires lived below their means consistently, and the single most common behavior they reported was delaying purchases to evaluate whether they actually wanted them 3 days later. 3 days. Most impulse spending evaporates in 3 days. They know their numbers without being asked. Ask someone who's quietly building wealth what their savings rate is and they'll tell you immediately. Ask their expense ratio on their index fund. They know it. Ask their net worth to the nearest thousand. They've checked recently. Ask how much they need to retire comfortably at their target age. They've modeled it. Financial numbers are not abstract or intimidating to them. They are a scoreboard they check regularly because checking the scoreboard is how you know if the game plan is working. According to a 2025 SoFi survey, only 31% of Americans track their net worth consistently. The quietly wealthy are almost entirely in that 31%. The other 69% have strong opinions about what car brands say about you and almost no idea how much money they actually have. They talk about money honestly and without embarrassment. Quietly wealthy people mention their Roth IRA the way other people mention their Netflix queue. They ask questions at dinner like, "Did you max out your HSA this year? Or are you doing a traditional or Roth 401k?" They don't perform modesty and they don't perform wealth. They just talk about money like it's a normal topic because for them it is a normal topic because they've been working with it intentionally for long enough that it stopped feeling charged or shameful. Financial openness is both a signal and a multiplier. People who talk honestly about money learn faster. They share strategies. They normalize discipline in ways that make discipline easier for everyone around them. If you've never heard someone you know talk openly about investing, their savings rate, or their financial goals, that silence might mean they don't have anything to talk about. Or it might mean the topic is too uncomfortable because the reality underneath it is something they've been avoiding. They have an emergency fund that's genuinely funded. This sounds obvious until you look at the numbers. According to Empower's 2025 data, the median emergency fund balance among Americans who have one at all is approximately $600. One car repair, one ER copay, one broken appliance. The quietly wealthy have 3 to 6 months of actual living expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account earning somewhere between 4% and 5% annually, which as of early 2026 means their emergency fund is also a performing asset. They don't touch it for non-emergencies because they've clearly defined what counts as an emergency. They don't feel it as deprivation because they built it gradually and automatically until it reached the target. The emergency fund isn't just financial protection, it's behavioral protection. It means that when something breaks, something unexpected happens, something goes sideways, they respond from stability instead of panic, which means they don't make expensive decisions under financial stress, which means they don't dig holes trying to climb out of holes. That calm is worth more than most people calculate. They are ruthlessly intentional about recurring expenses. Subscriptions, memberships, automatic renewals, they audit these quarterly like it's a second job. A 2026 study found the average American spends $219 a month on subscriptions while believing they spend $86. That gap of $133 a month, quietly bleeding out of accounts people aren't watching, is more than $1,500 a year in invisible waste. The quietly wealthy have a different relationship with monthly charges. Every recurring expense is either actively chosen and actively valued or actively cancelled. They don't keep the gym membership for the motivation it doesn't provide. They don't keep the streaming service they stopped using in October. They have fewer subscriptions than the average American and better justified ones, which means money that other people are leaking into autopay is instead going into accounts that compound. They invest in themselves in ways that generate returns. The quietly wealthy spend money on books, courses, certifications, skills, and knowledge that directly increases their earning capacity or investment literacy. This is not the same as spending on experience for its own sake. This is capital allocation. They learn about tax-advantaged accounts and then use them. They understand how to read a balance sheet because they read a book about it. They take a course in negotiation and then negotiate a salary increase that pays for the course 20 times over in the first year. According to Georgetown University research, every additional year of education or vocational training increases lifetime earnings in the United States by an average of $280,000. The quietly wealthy aren't just saving money, they're growing their capacity to earn it, which is the lever that makes everything else faster. They are genuinely comfortable saying no to the expensive group trip, to the dinner at the restaurant where no one looks at prices, to the round of drinks when they've had enough and the tab is about to become impressive. They say no without lengthy justification, without visible discomfort, without performing guilt about it. This is harder than it sounds inside a culture that treats spending as social participation. Saying no to discretionary spending, especially in front of other people, requires a clarity about your financial priorities that most Americans haven't developed because most Americans have never sat down and articulated what they actually want their financial life to look like in 10 years. The quietly wealthy have. They made a decision at some point about what mattered more, the dinner or the decade, the round of drinks or the retirement account, the trip or the financial margin that makes them feel genuinely free. That decision made the no easy. They think in decades, not months. This is possibly the most important item on this list because it underlies all the others. The quietly wealthy person at your office is not making financial decisions based on how things feel this month. They're making them based on a mental model that stretches 10, 20, 30 years forward. They understand at a bone-deep level that $500 invested at 34 is worth approximately $2,200 at 64, assuming 8% average annual returns. Which means every $500 they divert away from investing and toward consumption doesn't cost them $500. It costs them $2,200 of future wealth. Goldman Sachs research has consistently shown that high earners who fail to build wealth almost universally share one trait: short time horizons. They optimize for now. They manage comfort, appearance, and month-to-month experience instead of compounding. The quietly wealthy optimize for later. Not because they're joyless, but because they've done the math and the math made the trade obvious. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Diane, with her scratched Honda Fit and her reusable lunch container, was not behind. She was the most ahead of anyone at that table, and none of us could see it because we had been trained our entire lives to read spending as a signal of success. It isn't. Spending is visible. Wealth is not. The person next to you who looks most like they have it together, the lease, the clothes, the restaurants, the curated life, might be 30 days from financial panic. And the person who packed their lunch and said no to happy hour might be 20 years from permanent financial freedom. Learn to read the invisible signals. Learn to build the invisible infrastructure: the retirement account, the emergency fund, the automated savings, the ruthlessly audited subscriptions, the long time horizon, the ability to say no without apology. None of it shows up on Instagram. All of it shows up in the number you see when you open your brokerage account at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday before the world wakes up. That number is the real one. Make sure it's telling a story you're proud of. If this video helped you see money differently, please subscribe to Liana Invests. We upload every single day, and if you got value from this, hit that like button so more people can find us. I'll see you in the next one.